actually, if you put an AI that says dumb stuff on your website, you're responsible for what it says.
That's crazy. Hi, and welcome to this new episode of Odoo Unplugged. So today we're going to talk about trends in development. We're going to talk about, those cool things that everybody talks about, and should we not do them, and what did we do with them at Odoo? I have two guests with me, so I guess you guys can introduce yourself, actually. So, Mehdi, you go first.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Mehdi. I'm a software engineer at the Professional Services department in Odoo. What we do usually is create customizations for clients that are not fully satisfied with the standard Odoo. So let's say, for example, we rework some of the accounting flow, some of the sales flow. And we usually encounter API integrations in our everyday work. And
And I'm Damien. I'm in the product management team. I'm in a somewhat of a hybrid position because I have a tech background at Odoo, so I tend to manage more technical aspects of the product.
You used to be a developer. When I entered the company, you were a developer.
And so my role now is to kind of guide the development of the framework and to say no to a lot of stuff that he then has to implement in their team. Yeah. So that's it.
Okay, that's a nice way to show your interaction. I mean, why not? So I suggest we start with like the most obvious subject, actually, because it's been like 1 year that the media are all over the place talking about one thing: artificial intelligence. So there have been all those things with ChatGPT. I don't know if you guys tried it yourself, but it is truly amazing what that thing is able to do, right?
That's actually a good question. Do you use it in your everyday development workflow?
That's the point.
I know that I do use it even for stuff like copywriting a little bit. I also use GitHub Copilot a lot, and I've been using it since the start.
Maybe you can recall what it is for people.
Yeah, GitHub Copilot is basically an AI that autocompletes as you type. So you start typing 5 characters of code and it fills in like 200 of them.
And does it really work? 'Cause I never tried it, but
if you tell it what to do, it can be really quite good. I've used it a lot also in personal projects, and I was actually quite amazed because Odoo is we have our own framework in JavaScript and in Python, and it knows them both. Like I can ask it to do an all component, I can ask it to do ORM models, and it works and it names things quite well. Like the code is readable. It's not perfect, of course. I think like most AI at the moment, but it's really astonishing, to be quite honest. I got used to it, so now it's part of my.
And what kind of things were you programming with it? I mean, from a complexity point of view, because
it helped me. Like recently, I did put my hands in the code a little bit last year for the automations of Odoo Studio, which is kind of like low-level stuff, and it did help me quite a lot. So it's like for functional stuff, it works really well. For more technical stuff, like if you were to do stuff into the framework itself, it's going to be hit or miss because it doesn't know everything. But still, it's really quite good. I would advise anyone to use it if you want to work faster and more efficiently.
Okay, crazy.
I would add something on that exact point. Actually, like I also use a Copilot from time to time. So if I'm getting started on a project and I want like the structure, the basic structure of the project, I just use Copilot to make my start faster. But I would actually like disable the completion from time to time when like the flow gets complicated, because Copilot gets a bit annoying when it suggests something that you didn't even.
And it makes sense actually, because it knows the things like everybody does. So all the things really common, it knows them, and so it can give them to you. But
and it was trained on basically all of GitHub's data, so it's not surprising that it knows Odoo. But still, I would have thought that Odoo would be like buried beneath all the Django stuff that you can find on GitHub, or all the React
and
stuff.
It is not.
Yeah. And yet, it can make the difference between the two frameworks. It's really
crazy.
quite good.
Also, something interesting, it learns from your style of coding as well. It tries to copy your style. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what, if you tend to give like long variable names, things like that?
Exactly. And if you tend, for example, to have a certain structure for doc strings as well, it copies like the same structure when creating doc strings for functions.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Quite amazing.
Yeah.
Crazy. And so the next question is, what what kind of integrations can we do with, so maybe not Copilot, but with ChatGPT or AI like that. I have a story about that actually, because last week, that's a true story. So that's really perfect timing, but I'm not bullshitting. Okay, that's a real story. Last week I was at the restaurant with friends, so developers. They were at university with me, and at some point we start talking about AI, and they tell me, but at Odoo you must be integrating that with everything, right? You could put it everywhere. I was like, actually, well, to my knowledge, we put it on website. We put it in all the HTML fields. So in the
text
you
editor,
can ask ChatGPT to just give you something, but basically that's it. And to my knowledge, we're not putting it elsewhere, right?
We have another integration that is very much discrete, and it's more for demo stuff. But if you configure a new website on Odoo, it will ask us, hey, what's your sector of activity? What do you want from your website? Do you want to get more leads or just develop the brand? And in the past, we had some sample data that we would fill into the website to like show what it could look like to avoid the blank page stress for authors. And now what we do is that we send this data that you put in, like I have a shoe store activity. We send that to a platform that we own that will ask ChatGPT, hey, can you provide some demo content for someone who's making a shoe store website? And we pull that into the website that we output for you. Obviously, these are just placeholders, but that means that at least when you land on the website that we created for you, you have something that evokes your actual business and not some generic stuff. But it's mostly toy, mostly a toy.
Yeah, it is, because actually I have another story with that. But so on my free time, I'm part of some fan club on some sci-fi series, whatever, and we are redoing the website with Odoo. We were already using it before, but a way older version. So I start the thing to generate a new website, and you ask me what kind of website I want. So I'm just like, okay, let's try just to see what it gives me. I'm just going to type the name of the series. So really, nothing. It's not very informative, huh? And for an AI, it's hard. And it's funny because the result I got was some kind of, I don't know, an environment-friendly website. There's this kind of, very eco-friendly thing. But all the things that were said, so it looks like some religion stuff. It was really weird. But everything was linked to the themes of the series. So still it had understood more or less what I was trying to do, just not that it was about a fan club. But it was funny.
Actually, what I think, if I remember correctly, what we even do is that we generate all this content, and then we ask ChatGPT to review the content it just generated, and we ask it something like, is it okay? Should we use it? Do you think that what you outputted is good enough? And then sometimes it will say no, and then we fall back on the stupid placeholders that we had before.
From a philosophical point of view,
it's
funny. Crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to ask an AI, can you read what you just said, and does it make sense? And then it will say, yeah, no, I'm sorry, I just bullshitted you. Just use the old data, it's going to be better.
No, nice. So outside of these integrations, are they things? So all these are already there in Odoo 17. Are there things coming for Odoo 18? Do we plan to put it everywhere, like my friend suggested?
No, I don't think so. We had a discussion. I don't remember when it was exactly, a few months ago, when we saw that AI was really not just a toy anymore, but was getting integrated into Windows, into GitHub, into really professional stuff, where you think, okay, it seems that we have reached a point where it can be really useful. Mm-hmm. We had a meeting with other POs and the management to decide, hey, what should we do? We had, of course, a ton of ideas. I remember that there was stuff like, hey, we could ask it to review some kind of analytics and suggest stuff. We could ask it to review resumes that people upload to apply for positions, which personally I kind of hate the idea of automating this step, but that's a personal point of view.
But hey, on the other hand, some customers might ask for that. Some structures might want these kind of things. So that's also, it's not because you leave the option to do something like that you need to want to wish to make it unavoidable for everyone, but still I agree with you.
Yeah. I think we surfaced ideas like, use it as a moderator on the forum. So like ChatGPT could review uploaded content by users and say, hey, this should be moderated by a human, typically. I don't remember all the use cases we had in mind, but we had a lot. Of course, the Odoo way is usually to start small and with the most useful stuff. And the strength of these AIs at the moment is generating content. And so it was kind of obvious to put it in the website because that's where you will use a lot of content and use and generate a lot of content. But yeah, I'm not completely up to date on what is going on inside of R&D in other departments with regard to AI. So I'm not sure if we're gonna already implement other stuff. There is also the question of how much it will cost us, because at the moment this integration is free, even in the community edition of Odoo. And at some point maybe it will start costing us some actual real money. But yeah, and what I remember that what surprised me at this meeting a few months back is that, in technology, things kind of move fast. New trends emerge all the time. Yeah. And we often get asked immediately in the product department, hey, should we add this new technology to what we do? And the usual answer we give is, yeah, let's wait a bit. Let's see if it's really useful. Let's see the use cases. For example, if you compare the speed at which we integrated AI into Odoo compared to a request that we've been having for years, which was integrating with blockchain or Bitcoin, to which we always said no because the use case is not really clear. I mean, you can see the disdain for Bitcoin on my face as I speak, I think.
Let people in the chat judge that.
And so, yeah, it was really surprising that, I mean, basically ChatGPT 3 is 1.5 years old, or maybe 2, and we did it in a year, adding it to Odoo. Actually, we did it in like a month, but it was a year after that it got really released. And yeah, it was kind of surprising. I think it's probably the speediest integration I've seen of a new technology in Odoo, which is kind of interesting in itself, and maybe.
But it's. I think what made it so fast actually is just that, well, from a purely technical point of view, it's not, well, we're calling ChatGPT, we're asking it to generate me something, and we're getting the result. So there is no big logic on our side going on. But I think it's working really nice and it's doing the job. And so that's good. But I agree with you that, when there is something trendy like that, the reason why my friends were talking about that is because they would like to put that in their company, in the kind of software they work on. I'm not giving too many information away. And why do they want to put it there? Because they want to play with ChatGPT, because they want to play with the new thing. I mean, it's come on, it looks cool. Huh? So they want to do something with it because as a developer, they find it interesting. And I think that is also something that must be a factor in people wanting to put it somewhere. It's just that they want to play with it. And it is also our role as like the editor to just say, okay, you want to play with it, but what for? What for? Because frankly.
And we also use AI for the OCR module we have in Odoo.
We do use AI. Yeah. It's not a LLM like ChatGPT, and we've been doing that for a few years now, like 5 years, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's vision AI, and we have other use cases like this that I kind of flew under the radar, but
we use a deep learning model. But we just use the model and integrate it into our code.
Yeah, so, I don't think. Do we train the models for?
No, we don't train the models. We just use it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember that we have like processes to send feedback to the model that, hey, you missed like this VAT field, which is in a weird place in this invoice. But I don't know if it basically just means that we save a template somewhere that the AI reuses, or if we retrain it. I don't think we retrain it. You're probably right.
We use it, we integrate into our code.
Now that you say that, I'm thinking, okay, is there other places where we put AI and I don't remember it? I know that we have
there are a bunch of places, but I think the message here is, so to maybe talk more generally speaking, is putting AI for the sake of putting AI doesn't really make sense. It needs to be interesting for the project. Otherwise, I think we will just end up with people adding, that little thing that was on old versions of Microsoft Words in the late 90s, 2000s, like little clippy, asking you, "Hello, can I help you?" and basically asking you to chat with it. So we could just reintroduce something like that. And frankly, do we want that?
It's funny that you speak of small assistants like this, because I remember that at the meeting we discussed about training an AI on our documentation and putting it on the website, to answer questions on live chat, stuff like this. And I think, I know that a partner did it.
I think for documentation, it might make a bit more sense. The thing is, having that within the software directly when you're using it is a bit noisy. And it's not that it's entirely useless, but that Clippy was using resources, and it was just, what the hell? Do I need that while I'm typing my text? I don't think so.
And usually they tend to complicate stuff, I think. They tend to suggest stuff that you don't actually need. They also, if you know AI a little bit, you know that they tend to hallucinate a lot and to create
over-engineer.
Or create stuff that, like, if you ask an AI, I did try it with custom GPTs on OpenAI. You can give it a data set to kind of, it won't be trained on it, but it can access it to reply to you. And so I gave it all the Odoo documentation and I asked it questions, and it got really good answers if you ask the right question. But if you ask, hey, is it possible to do that? It will tend to always say yes. It really wants to help you, even it will say yes, sure, do this. And it speaks of menus that don't exist, and obviously it's not something that we can really put into production. And I think there was actually a story recently in the media about this. I think it was an air company that deployed an AI as a help desk agent on the website, and the AI promised stuff to customers like, we can refund you, of course, and actually no, it was not true, and so they had to go to do a trial to determine that actually, if you put an AI that says dumb stuff on your website, you're responsible for what it says.
That's crazy. But again, that's also one of the limits people forget maybe a bit about. If you hire someone to answer the chat, you train this person and you tell this person, okay, you can say that, you cannot say that, and here are the correct things. If you deploy some AI, and even if you train it with your own data, you need to test it really, really well, because it's so complex, actually. That's also the beauty of it. It's so complex that you lose a bit control on the actual output it will give, like 100% of the time. Because even if it tells right things 90% of 95 or 95% of the times, if you have a lot of traffic on your website and the 5% it's just telling crazy bullshit or I don't know, or racist jokes or whatever, you'll get into trouble.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, yes, that's the point. Like, as you said, using AI just for AI is not good, because as we see, like in Odoo, like we only use something if it's really needed for our like use case. Let's say for OCR, it's really important that customers automate reading of invoices and put them into Odoo directly. So, and also this gets me back also to a previous company I worked for. So we were trying to predict food production for companies to help them eliminate food waste. So basically, we have like a lot of time series data. We have like, for example, how much you sold in this week, how much you sold next week, and would have this data for 10 to 5 years. And we use train these machine learning and even deep learning models to do this. And like we spend a lot of time training like the most complex deep learning models with transformers and everything. And the best results we got with naive statistical models. For some of our clients, and we found ourselves wasting a lot of time doing something really over complex for what we do, and so this is
that's kind of the problem when you get a new hammer, everything looks like an AI.
Exactly.
And I think we had this discussion years ago in Odoo when we started doing the predictive scoring of leads in CRM. There were some voices that were suggesting, hey, we could actually use AI to do stuff. And then we tried basically a bias theorem, and it works super well. And you're like, okay, why make things complicated when you can just look at what happened in the past, take a few guesses
Exactly.
that are not bad, but not over-engineered, and then work with that, and it works quite well, actually.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that we work this way, because a lot of the value of Odoo is that it is simple, or at least it looks simple for the user. That's the main thing, really. And you know it as a product owner. There are a lot of things that you say no to all the times. Why? Not just because you want to be rude with people, I hope, but just because it would make the software more complex. And we really try to hunt down all these opportunities. If we can choose not to put a button somewhere and have something a bit more intelligent than that, we do that all the time. And so clearly, when it comes to integrating something like that, we want to have something simple, something clear for the user, and not something you need to configure everywhere that will give tons of different outputs.
There is also the problem when you try to do things too simple, especially using AI, for example, is that you have no idea what it does. And I don't know if you, like in my code, I don't like black magic stuff. Like you kind of know it works, but the user has no way to intuit how it worked, why it did. Like if you start to automate stuff and try to make things intelligent, then people have no control over what happens in their ERP, which is kind of like a really important piece of software in a company. And so we avoid magic stuff most of the time when we can. So, and AI in a lot of cases falls into the magic stuff category.
Yeah, exactly.
And when there is magic, it needs to be logic when explained, actually. So I have a few places in mind with accounting where some kind of configuration will trigger some behaviors that are not explicitly configured by the user, but even if someone does not understand it and asks the question to the support or whatever, which is okay, or looks at the documentation, once explained, it seems logic. It's normal that we do that. It's just we hide it just because we know that we will need that. So that makes sense. We have a question in the chat about what we were saying about cryptocurrencies earlier. You just opened Pandora's box. I'm sorry. So I'm just going to display it. So basically, the question is, you said that you've always said no to integrating cryptocurrencies, blockchain into Odoo. Could you tell us why? And how do you choose what to add to Odoo and what not?
It's a loaded question, of course. For cryptocurrency, I can reply super easily. We are an opinionated software company, in a way. I mean, obviously, as you said, we try to, even if we don't like something, for example, we have modules to track employees when they log in, log out, where they are. We don't use it internally because that's not our point of view of most of our interactions with employees, but we did it anyway, even if we don't really like it. We know that people want it. Mm-hmm. In the case of cryptocurrency, a really small amount of people want it, and they believe in that, I'm going to call it business model, even though it pains me to do so. They really hardly believe in it, but that's a really small fraction of the actual user population of Odoo. And we had a feedback even on that, I think 2 weeks ago, where the person told me, the use case of Bitcoins are now really coming into the age of maturity. And I kind of laughed, to be honest, because I think the blockchain exists, since 2008? Mm-hmm. And besides dubious usage on cryptocurrencies and ETFs, and not ETFs, like the images, I don't remember the NFTs, yeah, exactly. Which itself was dubious as well. I mean, we've all seen this bubble rise and explode.
That was crazy.
Obviously, there is no actual truly widely accepted use case for blockchain. Mm-hmm. And I will even reiterate some stuff that I see on Twitter come and go, is that basically blockchain is a linked list with a hash that stores the integrity of the chain. That's it. There's nothing really super complex there. So the fact that we say no is simply that there is no good use case. And if you say, but in e-commerce I want to accept Bitcoin payments, that's not true. Mm-hmm. It's like saying, I'm going to pay with shares from Apple. It's no longer a currency. It's a trading stuff. It's I'm not going to say pyramid scheme because I know it's loaded and I know that people in the chat might get angry, but that's kind of my belief. And I mean, the guy who paid with Bitcoin for his pizzas in 2009, he must be really pissed off by now because I think he paid 10,000 Bitcoins for a pizza. And that's like 15 millions now or whatever. So you don't pay with Bitcoin, really. And even like I know that there was also a lot of discussion that Bitcoin is private. But that's actually not true. It has been proven mathematically that the ledger is basically in the open. So if your address leaks at some point, all your past history can be revealed. So that's not even a good way to use money and to transfer it. You lose all the privacy of a banking system, all the security of a banking system. So no, we really don't see a use case for cryptocurrency at all. And for blockchain itself, without the shady currency part, we kind of have something that looks like a blockchain in the French accounting because you have to like make sure that there is no modification in the past. So we did, in fact, create like a linked list with a hash that verifies that the integrity of the list.
And that was because of a legal need. Because
there was a legal need indeed, and it's not a bad one.
Sure, but
it's not really blockchain.
We didn't just do it for the sake of doing it. It's really because they wanted something to ensure that you couldn't change everything everywhere, and so we had to do something.
But to be honest, I am yet to see a real, actual, useful use case of blockchain and Bitcoin. Okay, so if you get one, send it to me on Twitter or whatever.
Sounds like a clear answer. Okay, to go back on the way we decide what to put into Odoo or what we should not put into Odoo. We have another question in the chat up displaying now. So how do you assess the impact of any trendy features on Odoo user friendliness? Do you discuss with other users about that?
Again, it's a complicated question. We do we don't do a lot of user research in the sense of most UX designers would probably look down on my job and say, how are you deciding what to put and what to put not in the software? We don't do A/B testing. We don't do extensive user research. Usually we simply ask ourselves, what is the complexity of the development? In the case of ChatGPT, for example, as you said, it was super simple. You have basically one endpoint, you ask a question to the system, it replies to you. So it's really easy to integrate. In the case of blockchain, it's a nightmare because you have to handle a lot of stuff asynchronously, stuff like this. And so we check at the complexity of the development, we check at the value we think it will bring to the users. And then we have, I'm going to say it, I know that a lot of people will hate it, but we have the metric of, is it like good from a common sense point of view to do this? And we of course, there is like variability between product owners, even within the team. We have debates where someone would say, we should do this. Then I would say, too complex. Someone would say, but the value is enormous.
I think we also work a lot with, we still get a lot of information from customer tickets, from our own experience as well, because Odoo is using Odoo.
Yeah.
What a surprise.
We do a lot of dogfooding.
I mean, for accounting, for example, I know that it happens regularly that we have some feedback coming from our own accounting about things they want to do because Odoo's accounting is quite complex, and so sometimes we realize that there's something to do or to change because of this kind of feedback. So indeed, we don't have any real strict way of doing things like always, actually. Isn't it like the DNA of Odoo? But I think we stay very dynamic, and that's what makes it work, actually. And that will be the final word for this first part of the episode. We'll now make a short break and we'll be back in a few minutes. And we're back. So let's start with a last question about AI from the chat, actually, and then we will move on to other subjects, because actually we do have other subjects, but AI proves to be a long one. But come on, it's a nice one, so it's okay to take the time. So let's put this one. So AI ChatGPT seems to be a lot more than a trend. Do you regret not implementing it earlier?
Not really, because I don't think we could have done it much earlier than what we did. Basically, I think we did it in before version 6.17 a little bit, or maybe it just landed in 17 publicly, which was 6 months ago. So as I said, 1 year after ChatGPT got really
Yeah, it really exploded because that
exactly.
was really the time where everybody was talking about that. So it has existed. This kind of AI has existed for a long time, but the moment where we really started to hear about it everywhere all the time was really last year.
Yeah, so I don't think we're late on that, to be honest, and I don't think it will be a huge driver of sales anyway. I mean, it's a nice feature to have. Sure, it will help you in your day-to-day if you want to write if you want it to help you write emails to your customers, for example. It can help to reply customer tickets, stuff like that. But it's not a killer feature like it could be in, for example, if you take I don't know, Zendesk or I don't remember the name of the company, but something like that includes chatbots. Where it's really their core business, then yes, maybe for them it was important to have it super early. In our case, we do have live chat and chatbots, but I don't think it's such a huge problem not to have done it in that early. We have also to keep in mind that the fact that ChatGPT has really exploded in the tech world. It's being spoken of in other sectors, but if you're not a tech aficionado, you know about it, you probably never used it. I mean, most of the people I know
bit with it.
Yeah, exactly.
To
you tried
ask
it.
I know someone. He asked ChatGPT to write a poem about Pythagoras theorem, things like that. So everybody can try that. It works really well. But the actual use is arguable.
Exactly.
For this kind of
It's
thing.
not a killer feature. You don't need it to work in your day-to-day. So no, we don't have any regret, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, it would mean if we regretted not adding it earlier, it would mean that we would have wished to replace something we made earlier by this. And so the question would be, what do we sacrifice?
Exactly.
So, no, I think the timing is okay, and it adds to the wow effect. It was nice at the keynote for the experience. Mission complete. So let's maybe move on to the next topic. So I know you have a lot of things to say about this one. Why not using microservices in Odoo?
As I said,
the floor is yours, Damien.
As I said, when we prepared the episode a little bit, it's like kind of a PTSD meeting for
That's
me.
right.
Like
That's
I can
your therapy moment.
Exactly. I used to work in a company where we use microservices and containerization a lot for absolutely no good reason, and it was really a nightmare to maintain.
Again, I think everybody has a vague idea of what it is, but maybe just recall very quickly what is a microservice anyway.
So microservice is, I'm not an expert on the matter, but my take on it is that you split your platform. It's usually for bigger platforms that you do that. So you split your platforms into services that are quite small. So for example, you will have one service whose scope is to authenticate users. You will have one service that is usually one endpoint in your API to fetch some kind of data. For example, if you were working in Odoo, you would have one endpoint for the CRM stuff, one endpoint for the sales stuff, one service for the help desk accounting. Exactly. Yeah. You could even split it further to have a service that is in charge of tax computations only, if you want to really go mad. And so the reason this exists, I think, as a technology, is to make it easy to scale stuff that needs to be scaled. And I think that's the part that a lot of people forgot about, is that if you don't need to scale, don't do that. It's going to be a nightmare, because the problem when you start working with microservices is that you have to have clear boundaries between services, which is not as easy as it may sound.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's just any kind of modeling, it's just arbitrary. So you decide that there will be a service for this, and then maybe 6 months after deploying the thing, you realize that, okay, but actually it cannot work like that because this one needs to communicate with this one, and then you start.
That's usually what you end up with, is that all your services will be super interconnected. So it's super cool because you have all small services with clear APIs. But as soon as you want to change one API in one service, you have to create other endpoints in the other services. And so your small feature that is basically one endpoint becomes a huge change set that is introducing like 5 new endpoints in other services that the one you are working on. And if you have split your services in teams, it means that you have to coordinate this effort between teams so that like all the services are ready to be deployed at the same time, of course, because everything needs to be interoperable. Or if you manage to make it like asynchronously, it means that you're really good and that you probably should be using microservices. But it complicates stuff so much. It's amazing.
Plus, at the end of the day, it's well, depending on the case, of course, but if you start having services depending on each other like that, it doesn't scale that well anymore, because it means that if you want to really add a lot of workers for one service, since it depends on another one, you might load that service as well.
If you have a lot of independency, it means. But the fact is that usually you will deploy microservices using some kind of containerization and automatic scaling. If you set up your now it would be a Kubernetes setup probably. If you set it up correctly, you can immediately tell the system, if you see this kind of load on the system, spawn another worker, another Docker image, whatever. So the scaling kind of goes automatically if you move in that direction. But it's another layer of complexity to add, by the way, because you need to now decide, okay, when do I scale? It also means that you kind of lose control of your platform.
Yeah.
If you have someone DDoSing you, all of a sudden the platform will scale, and then you've multiplied your Amazon invoice by 10 and you didn't do anything. Like it's not, you cannot control that. You can put limits, I think, in Amazon and Google, in the Google platforms, but still you kind of hope for the best.
Yeah, at least you need to be careful on the way the automatic scaling is done, because you don't want it to scale forever.
You always put limits anyway, but I mean, it makes sense if you're Netflix or if you're Amazon or if you're a huge company that needs to reach millions of people across continents. It clearly makes sense.
At the same time.
At the same time, and with low latency.
Exactly.
So that's like a huge problem. Here in Odoo, for example, it doesn't really make any sense. Most Odoo instances have 20 users and a website maybe with a few thousand visitors. I think I've just described something like 95% of Odoo instances. And obviously, such a complex setup doesn't make any sense. You've just put so many brakes on your development velocity that I'm not going to say you drop to zero, that's not true, but you divide it at least by 2, and probably, I think, from my experience, a lot more. Yeah.
That probably would mean for Odoo going for this kind of architecture would require a huge number of changes, of course. But I think indeed the thing is, Odoo does a bit everything as it is now, and everything is complicated. Everything is a lot of things, and so even with even if you manage to dispatch that into microservices, I think it will soon become very, very complex, because you have a lot of features that need to interact with each other to override part of the code, this and there. And so you need to...
Exactly.
It all depends on what is installed on the database of the customer. So it's one more layer of complexity.
And as a developer, I think that's really a strength of Odoo, that everything is interconnected. It means that there is some ramp up in your onboarding as a developer for Odoo to know, okay, I need to override this method on this model. And like you kind of get to know, okay, a few key methods on a lot of models, for example, action confirms on sales order, action post on account moves, stuff like this. But once you get that, you can basically plug into any workflow and do whatever you want. That means that if you set a lead to confirmed, it will create a sales order that will get auto-validated and then create an accounting invoice. And if you start doing it with microservices, I'm not even sure we could have this kind of modularity, because it means that instead of having one module that depends on sale, accounting, and CRM to like do some stuff with all that data, you would need to patch 3 different services, then probably have one other services that kind of serves as a like receptacle for all this data sharing and data management. So it would be a nightmare as a developer, I think. Then,
so we would be sacrificing our design, and I think it would be a pity, because one of the things that really, I think the first thing that really impressed me when I got into Odoo was really when I read the tutorial. I was learning how to program in Odoo, and just the explanation of how the models work, the inheritance, these kind of things. Because you read it and you're like, okay, actually it's simple to understand, but when you look it into action, you realize that there are so many things that are possible because of that. To me, the design, the whole modeling of Odoo, so all those the things is what makes the worth of the product. Yeah, and changing that for something else might be very bad. Actually,
I don't think it would be called Odoo anymore. It would be so different. Like the approach, that's really not in our DNA. So I mean, the chances of that happening are basically zero. Thank God. But it's. I remember that we had some feedback in the past, like, hey, should we, make silos out of our application so that if you have a lot of invoicing data that works on, you can split the database, have it live on another machine so that it's more powerful for that, but then the rest is not impacted by the fact that you use a lot of invoices. And no, we said no. We will keep saying no because it would be really complicated.
But then the question becomes, how do you scale when the database becomes really huge in Odoo? Because there are big projects. There is Odoo first.
Yeah, we are. I think our database is probably in the top 5% of big Odoo databases. We scale at the moment. It's only possible to scale the processing on Python. So that means that you can only have one database. That's at the moment the last pressure point, but access point that is not really scalable. At some point, you run out of RAM to throw at the database, but you can easily split like front-end servers, so Python servers. You can split them on multiple machines. That's what we do on Odoo.com. Actually, we have, I think now, 5-6 machines that are really beefed up, serving the website and the backend, but we have only one database server. What we are doing with Odoo 18, and actually I think it's already merged in the master branch, is that we allow to replicate the database and to split requests for read-only access and write access. Because basically when you navigate within the Odoo backend, we estimate that 90% of what you do is reading. You go on a lead. Basically, you start by reading, and then maybe you pass a message, maybe you modify a field, but most of the time you will do reading stuff. That means that we can replicate the databases on multiple servers. These replicates are read-only. So if we tell the system, okay, if the request incoming is read-only, you can actually read on any of these databases in the database pool. So you can have like 10, 100. So basically, there is no actual limit, but of course, these replicates need to be synchronized in real time because it's a management software. So the data needs to be consistent all the time. We're not Facebook. We don't want to be ultimately consistent. We want to be always consistent.
Would be better for accounting at least.
And so we have, of course, new limits. We are going to use this on Odoo.com soon. And see how it goes and if we tweak the system a little bit. But you can scale quite a lot. We have already a lot of instances with thousands of backend users. I mean, if you take Odoo.com alone, we are now, 3,000 employees, I think?
Yeah, a bit more.
Something like that. And, okay, we don't work all at the same time because we've split across time zones, but it's a good bet that 1,000 or 1,500 people connected and using the system actively at the same time is really not unrealistic. And it works. I mean, sometimes it's a bit slow, it happens. Sometimes it's also the connection at the farm that's actually slow. It's not always the Odoo server. And we always try to improve it. And frankly, I think it's faster now than when I arrived and it was Odoo 8 a few years back. So yeah, it's quite, it is possible to scale. It's a little bit more complicated because you don't get the auto-scaling. You could have some auto-scaling, but you don't get as much auto-scaling as you would get on microservices. But honestly, it's worth the trade, that's for sure.
Okay, I suggest we move on to another subject amongst the trends and things that are often asked by people. Rest or not rest? Because you have a bunch of stories with that, right? So people asked for it, but we don't have it like...
Perhaps we can do as we did and like a quick reminder of what is restful versus non-restful.
Yeah. So So REST is just a communication protocol between two systems. So you have like something to follow upon when you do like the requests, and like REST is a protocol similar to many other protocols that are used in communication and communication between software. And it's just like you have like for each resource you have an endpoint, and you can like have mainly four let's say methods. We have get to get the resource, post to create a new resource, put or patch to edit the resource, and delete to edit the resource. And this gives you the ability to let's say to have like an interface. It's like an API, like we call like a REST API. Means you have an interface which you call, and you don't know what's happening behind the scenes, but you just get the response from the backend.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, so in Odoo we usually like Odoo is exposed with another protocol. Another communication protocol called XML-RPC, and it's just another way of communicating.
What is that?
XML-RPC is just a like RPC stands for remote procedure call, and it's just like calling your Python functions from your Python code from a remote location. Let's say basically that's
so
that.
Basically, you call public functions
exactly
like that.
Yeah. And in Odoo, like we have like so. Like the XML-RPC is really simple, and you just have to expose functions. Like expose meaning that just you like make them public, and public function Odoo is just a function doesn't start with underscore. So if you decide, okay, I want to expose this workflow, I will just create a function, and this function will be used when someone calls my server with an XML-RPC, and it's as simple as that. So, and we have like this request for many customers in PS Tech, like not many customers, but a lot of customers asks like, okay, I usually work with a REST API, so why don't you expose Odoo as a REST API, okay? So we try first to convince them, okay, so it's basically just another communication protocol, just so you can learn in 1 hour, okay? if you are a developer.
It's just a function to call.
Exactly.
It should be something you're able to do. Yeah.
Just some setup. You create your token and stuff, and just you call the functions exactly as you do with the code if you're writing Python code. And I mean because I think that now that the trend is becoming more and more let's say present. Like all people like. When they get started, they usually use REST, and that's it. They don't like first, they say, compare between, okay, what should I use in this case? What should I do in this case? Is my application ready for, is my use case built for REST or not? But people just use REST without thinking about it. So that's why people usually, especially recent developers, they come, okay, I want to expose Odoo. Please expose Odoo for me as REST so I can know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, because they're used to that, and they think that is the only way, or they're not even aware that there is something
exactly. They're not even aware that there are other communication protocols, maybe 10 other used communication protocols that can be used and can do the job sometimes better, easier if you just learn it.
It's I do a bit of development on my free time, and if you look at any, and I really do mean any tutorial right now to build a React app, to build something with Vue.js, it's always REST. And it's funny because, as you say, they don't even say like REST is one possibility among others, but it's the simplest for this demo, so let's go with that. Exactly. They just say we're going to create RESTful endpoints for our API. There is no other way to think than that.
But that's often the problem with tutorials online. You have someone explaining a very, very, very simple use case, too simple, with very, very simple tools and the things that he's the most comfortable with. And often he doesn't even tell you that there are other ways of doing that. Right?
No, and I think what's interesting for RESTful versus RPC calls is that you need to think about the data that you're storing and what you plan to do with it. I think RESTful makes a lot of sense if you have something that basically just store data. Like if you have like the classic tutorials for a to-do app or whatever. Of course, you will only just do create some stuff, edit a little bit, and then delete it when you don't need it anymore. But that's not what we really do in Odoo. In Odoo, the point of Odoo and the usefulness of Odoo is that you have basically workflows. You click on a button, something happens, it triggers something else elsewhere, and it creates stuff and reminders, and it sends emails. And so if you want to plug that into a RESTful use case or RESTful API, you need to think in a really weird way, like, okay, if I want to confirm my invoice, I need to update the state of the invoice. Like I need to do a put call with like a payload where I change that value. But then it seems like it's a simple change. while in fact you're
If you do
triggering
a lot of
and
things,
the
yeah.
amount of data that is going to change with this simple change is enormous, and I think it just doesn't fit. If you look at what I've seen sometimes in the wild is like a RESTful API. I think it was Stripe, where you have a payment intent, I think they call it, and then you have to create like a payment intent validation object that you need to post. Then you need to update that object to say that it's done. It will trigger a change, and it's really like you can see that they have a workflow and they try to make it fit into objects that they split artificially, and it's really weird.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, for example, like you're going from point A to point B, but to go to that you must do like A, B, C, and then D, like this.
Exactly. And at the end you have like 5 stuff to delete because it basically got used exactly one time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think we are more dedicated to RPC in Odoo, but we have I mean, you've done it, I guess, doing RESTful endpoints for customers.
Yeah. I mean, you just like get a chunk of some Odoo code. Let's say they want, like, for example, something to confirm and do something else. Okay, you say /confirm/ the ID of the invoice, for example, and you just do the logic there, and then you expose the endpoint as an HTTP endpoint, and that's it. And it's as simple as that.
So you basically transform the method call into a root call, but that's it.
Exactly, with an endpoint. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Also, something else to add on top of this, like, Odoo didn't start as an API server, actually. It doesn't start as an API server you could call with endpoint. It started as a whole, as an application as a whole, as you said, with workflows. So, like, the front end is strongly connected to the back end. So we can't now, like, ask the question, why does Odoo do not use REST? Doesn't make sense to ask this question, in my opinion.
And we don't need it.
Yeah, we don't.
For the application itself. And if you really want to have RESTful APIs like that you can control with a lot of granularity, I know that the Odoo Community Association maintains a REST framework for Odoo. I haven't used it. I assume it's probably a little bit complicated to set up because you need to decide what you expose, what you do not expose, how access rights will play with all that, because that's another layer of a complexity to add. But if you ever want to do it, it's not that complicated.
Yeah, it's again, we have the point of view of the editor, and so we want our thing to be the simplest possible, and it's complicated enough, huh? and if you need more advanced things or really want something specific like that that we chose not to do, usually the community has done it, and that's the case here. I suggest unless you have something else to.
No, just wanted to add, it's, as I said, like, it's another communication tool. It's just a tool, after all, like to make you achieve some goal. Like, for example, shipping companies usually like use the SOAP protocol because they started early in the tech market, and SOAP was really used at that time. So if for I was faced before the project that you have to have the greatest shipping method, I'm gonna say, why you use SOAP? Why don't you expose a REST API for me? I just get informed a bit about SOAP and then use the protocol as another communication protocol.
Yeah, it's not that complicated. Yeah. I mean, SOAP is a bit painful now. It's
painful
it's
to
XML
test.
based.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay, so I suggest, because we are really reaching the end of the episode, so we still have a few minutes, I suggest we answer a bunch of questions from the chat again. So let's start with this one, actually. So, are you currently debating on any potential trendy features to decide if it should be added in Odoo or not?
No,
Haha, someone wants spoiler for the next version.
Everybody wants spoiler all the time. Let me think. Some trendy features.
In accounting, I can answer no. We have a lot of things, but not trendy things.
What we did that could be considered a little bit trendy recently, but it's already been done post 17, I think. So it's 17.1 maybe. We have done something that, do you know GraphQL?
Yeah.
We've so GraphQL is basically another communication protocol. If we want to continue the debate, it's instead of having, it's basically kind of giving access to a database from the JSON world. So you say, hey, I would like to have this object, and within this object, I want all the embedded data from other objects that are linked to it. For example, you can ask to have the information for sales orders, then all the lines of the sales order detailed precisely, then all the products of the lines detailed, and you can go deep and deep and deep and get everything in one payload. GraphQL also includes the notion of mutation, which is kind of like RPC. Basically, it's a method. We didn't do that, but we did something that's a bit like GraphQL with I don't remember the name we use in the end. The name we used in the end, but we called it Unity endpoint internally, and it's basically when you load a view in Odoo, we go and tell the server, hey, give me all the information about the sales order. And in the past, it would say, okay, this sales order will contain lines, and these lines are those with the IDs, and then a bunch of IDs. And then we had to get to the server and say, can you give me all the data for the sales order lines with these IDs? Now we allow the system to read everything in one go, which is, from a performance point of view, a good thing, except if you start asking things like too deep. If you go 10 level deep, it means that we have to do a lot of jointers in the database. And if you stumble upon a table that is absolutely huge, then the joint may be super slow. So it's like GraphQL, it can be dangerous if you start to go too deep into the system. That's one of the trendy things we did, but we did it in-house. We didn't implement GraphQL itself. And besides this, I have nothing that comes really to mind.
So you'll have to wait till Odoo experience.
Yeah. Usually the
maybe
big
we don't know yet.
You probably don't know yet.
Typical Odoo workflow. Don't worry. Okay, and I suggest we conclude with one last question here. What would be something you'd add to Odoo that would make your life as a developer easier? I would say, again, a trendy thing that you think would be nice. Do you have any idea?
I'm going to ask the one who does development for professional people first.
Good idea.
What would you do? Let me think.
If you have no idea, it's fine.
Yeah, I have nothing obvious that comes to mind either. We are working on some stuff to simplify some APIs. For example, the debug mode is kind of a nightmare. Right now, it's been kind of a mess for a few years. We've put a lot of stuff in it. Now we're kind of splitting back into like its original intention of having a developer mode and like an advanced mode for advanced users, which are not necessarily developers.
Whoa, I didn't know we were doing that.
Yeah, it's coming.
That's good.
It's coming. So that's one of the things we're simplifying, or we're trying to simplify. One thing that's still in early development, it's not even really getting developed, it's still at the planning phase, but we plan on reworking the authentication mechanisms in Odoo. So right now we have like the base authentication within Odoo itself with the database, password, user, blah, blah, blah. We have some auth modules that go to fetch users from a remote system. For example, we have the possibility to integrate with LDAP. We have some auth integrations that are kind of shaky because our auth implementation is kind of old and showing cracks, not from a security point of view, but from a like usability point of view as a developer. And so we are thinking about having some kind of clear authentication framework, which will also add new features like the FIDO Alliance, which is basically a new way to authenticate users without passwords that uses public key cryptography based on your devices. So for example, you will be able to log into your Odoo account without a password, but with your biometrics on your phone or with the biometrics on your computer. I see you have the same as me, that you can use your finger on the fingerprint sensor. So this we already have. We plan on using it as a second factor in a two-factor authentication system. We will also like clean the two-factor authentication mess because we added it like in a stable versions with a few modules that need to link everything. So that's kind of trendy in a way because authentication right now is a hot mess, a hot debate, maybe not a hot mess, but a hot debate in the development world because we have a lot of attacks in the based on password leaking, and this it's called WebAuthn. It's not easy to say as well for a French speaker, but WebAuthn allows you to basically avoid passwords altogether and make sure that people. It's basically you remove all the man-in-the-middle attack possibilities because it uses cryptography. You remove all the attacks based on just trying stupid passwords on a lot of accounts.
That is the thing. A lot of just using password, and we see that with two-factor authentication. That is just like everywhere now. Passwords are not enough anymore because no one puts a password long like this with
I do, but I have a
only
password
random
manager.
characters. Yeah, unless you have a password manager.
But not many people have those. I mean, I'm trying to convince my family and friends to use them, and they look
Really
at
hard,
me like, they roll their eyes. Oh, here he comes again with his password manager. but I mean, I don't know about you.
Like,
My email
later.
account contains my whole life. If you get my Gmail account, you can basically do whatever you want and rename all my accounts and take over my life. So I've secured it as much as I could.
Of course.
But so that's one of the things that is kind of trendy that is probably going to get into 18. But I mean, as I said, it's still in the planning stage.
You'll see. And that will be the final word for today. Thank you for your answers, the discussion, and all the powerful insights that you gave us today. And thanks to you as well for watching this episode. And see you again in the next one. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
It was nice.